This is the story of a man who got a phone call and never looked at the world the same again. They told him his brother died in a card game. Quick fight, wrong move, knife to the ribs. Case closed. But what they didn't know was this. He didn't believe in accidents. Not in rooms run by men who never shuffled fair. Not when the dealer was a made man, with blood on his sleeves and silence in his smile. So he vanished, rebuilt himself in the dark. And when he came back, he didn't bring police. He brought playing cards. Owned for every man who watched his brother die. Each name, each lie, each kill. And when the last card hit the table, it wasn't justice. It was a debt, paid in full. They said it ended in a flash. A card game gone south, a busted hand and a knife pulled too fast. They said his brother stood up first, that he threw the first punch, that the dealer acted in self-defense. That's what they said. But Mason never believed in accidents. Not in rooms like that. Not when the dealer was Vincent Moretti, a made man with a known taste for rigged games and quiet bodies. And especially not when every face at the table was a ghost, the kind you didn't see in daylight unless you were buying or burying. He got the call on a Thursday. Cold night, neon lit. He was fixing a broken headlight on his car when the phone buzzed, unknown number. He answered anyway. There was a fight, the voice said, at Dante's lounge. Your brother's dead. That was it. No sorry, no explanation. Just dead. When Mason got there, the crime scene tape was already down. The velvet table still had blood dried on the corner, but the room was empty, chairs pushed back, cards scattered like debris after a storm. The manager, a stone-faced man with a broken nose and a fresh Rolex, told him what the cops had written in the report. Your brother went wild, pushed the dealer, got stabbed. That was all. Case closed. But Mason knew his brother. Caleb wasn't a saint. He'd bet too hard, drank too fast. But he never started fights he couldn't finish. And he didn't die for nothing. He wasn't the kind of guy who bled out on cheap carpet over a bad beat. So Mason buried him with quiet hands and a face that didn't cry. Then he burned the suit he wore to the funeral, and for the next 2 years, he disappeared from the life he knew. He started with the small games. Back alley poker nights in Redford. Whiskey rooms in the back of pawn shops. Underground joints where the buy-in was more than a month's rent, and the only rules were, don't ask and don't look too long. He wasn't there to win. He was there to watch. He learned to spot the signs, the tells, the little twitches, the way a rigged deck moved through a dealer's fingers, the way guys like Vincent kept a hand under the table just in case. He made friends with bouncers and bartenders, slept in motels that reeked of bleach and regret. Everyone remembered the night Caleb died. No one wanted to talk about it, until the night he met Lenny Doyle. Lenny was a burnout with burn scars and a nose that had been broken more times than he could count. He ran a game out of a laundromat basement, said he once played with Vincent, said he heard things. Your brother didn't lose no hand, he told Mason, chewing on a toothpick like it was a last meal. He called something he shouldn't have. Vincent was dealing dirty. Caleb saw it. He said something. That's why he died. Mason didn't blink, just asked, You sure? Lenny nodded, then said the words that changed everything. There's a tape. It took Mason 3 months to find it. A grainy security feed from a corner camera above the ice machine in Dante's lounge. No audio, just flickering black and white footage. But it was enough. He saw Caleb rise from his chair, not in anger but in shock. Saw him pointing, jabbing a finger at the table. Saw Vincent smirk, lean back, then give a nod to the man behind Caleb. That man pulled a knife. Quick, precise. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution, and every man at the table knew it. Mason watched the tape 10 times. Then he made a list. There were 6 men at that table, not counting his brother. Vincent Moretti, made man. Dealer that night, Alex Salvi, launderer with ties to the Tribeca family. Jonas Vex, ex-cop turned fixer Bert Cagney, ran numbers for 2 states, Mark Train, quiet, muscle, no record but blood on his hands. And the 6th man, unidentified, hood up, no name, just a tattoo on his left wrist. Mason paused the frame, zoomed in. A snake curled around a dagger. He'd seen it before. It belonged to the Farrell Street crew, a side branch of the old Crowley syndicate. Small time but deadly, known for hits that never made the news. Mason didn't tell anyone. He didn't post online, didn't call the cops. He wasn't looking for justice. He wanted balance. And blood. He started with Jonas Vex. Tracked him through old connections, a dive bar called Merrill's on 7th. Jonas was running protection for a backroom operation, drug deals, and hush money. Mason waited until closing, watched Jonas stagger to his car. No one else around, just concrete and shadows. He stepped out from behind a dumpster, gun in hand. Jonas didn't even have time to reach. "You were there," Mason said. "You watched him die." "I didn't." The bullet tore through his thigh. He dropped, screaming. Mason knelt beside him. "You're not dying, not yet. You're going to tell me everything. Then I'm going to send you a message." Jonas wept. Spilled names, deals, orders. Said Vincent called the play. Said Caleb was marked before the cards were ever dealt. Said the 6th man was a hitter named Raymond Shore. Mason listened. Then shot him through the heart. He left a card on Jonas's chest. The Jack of Spades. 1 word written across it in red ink. Liar. That was the beginning. The next visit wouldn't be so clean. But Mason didn't care. The list was getting shorter. And the blood was just starting to flow. Jonas Vex's body was found the next morning by a janitor taking out trash. The news called it gang violence. No one looked deeper. The cops filed it under the usual mess. Old deaths, wrong crowd. No one mentioned the Jack of Spades or the blood-red word written across it. But the others would see it. And they'd understand. Mason's message was clear. All debts must be paid. Next was Bert Cagney. He was a harder ghost to track. Bert had gone underground months before, running his operation through proxy fronts and burner phones. But Mason knew gamblers, knew the itch. No man like Bert stayed quiet forever. He found him in a casino outside state lines, not flashy. A second-rate place on tribal land where the cameras were old and the floor bosses looked the other way. Bert was playing craps, laughing with a waitress like the world wasn't closing in. Mason waited by the back exit, followed him through the lot. When Bert finally noticed him, his face cracked. Not fear, recognition. The kind that sinks into the gut like cold iron. "You Caleb's brother?" Mason didn't answer. Just raised the gun. Bert backed away fast, palms up. Hey, listen, I didn't touch him. I didn't even see the knife coming. I was just... A shot ripped into his shoulder. He screamed, fell to his knees. Mason stood over him. "Lay beneath, Lee to me again?" Bert whimpered. "It was Vincent. He rigged the deck. Caleb caught it. He wasn't supposed to call it out. Vincent didn't want a scene, so he gave the nod." The man behind him? "Ray Shore, cleaner. Ice cold, he did the cut. We just watched." Mason knelt, gun resting against Bert's temple. "Then you watched my brother bleed out for calling a cheat." Bert sobbed, nodding. Please don't." The second shot ended him. Another card left behind. The Queen of Diamonds. 1 word in red. Death. Mason left before the sirens. Hit the highway, disappeared into the dust. 2 down, 4 to go. He headed east. Tracked Alex Salvi to a warehouse district by the docks. Salvi had gone corporate. a fake business front importing clean tech parts. It was a lie, all of it. The shipments were covers, guns, pills, cash. Mason waited until night. He got in through the roof, dropped into the rafters above the main office. Salvi was there, counting bills, talking on the phone. Mason watched through a crack in the vent until the man was alone. Then he dropped, landed hard, gun in hand. Salvi tried to reach under the desk. Mason shot him through the hand. The scream was high and fast, blood on the floor. "I saw the tape," Mason said. "I know what you did." Salvi gasped, clutching his ruined fingers. It was Vincent. He made the call. Caleb, he wasn't supposed to see the switch. "And you?" Mason asked. "I kept quiet. I didn't want to die. You don't get it. Vincent's not just a dealer. He's connected. He's got the blessing. You cross him, you disappear. You're about to disappear anyway." The shot was cleaner than he deserved. Tin of clubs, red ink, silence. 3 bodies, 3 cards. A message sent loud enough for the right ears, but the 4th name, Mark Train. Didn't flinch. He was different. Train was ex-military, disciplined, quiet, a ghost among ghosts. Mason found him in New Mexico, holed up in a bunker compound guarded by ex-mercs and ex-cops. Getting in wouldn't be quiet. So Mason didn't try to sneak. He walked up the dirt road, hands up, no gun in sight. They'd grab him, beat him once, twice, hauled him in, bloody and limping. Train was waiting in a bare room with a table and nothing else. He looked at Mason and said, "You're the brother." Mason didn't reply. "You made a mess," Train added. 3 dead. You think this ends with me?" "I think it ends when I say it does," Train nodded once. Then gestured to the guards left the room. Mason's eyes flicked to the door. Train caught it. "They're loyal, but they know what I did. I paid them well to keep it buried." "You stabbed him?" "No," Train said flatly. "But I let it happen. I held the door shut. I watched him die." He was loud. "Vincent said he'd ruin everything. 1 dead man's better than a war. With the wrong people. You think that was your call to make?" Train stood, slowly. Mason didn't flinch. "If you're gonna do it," Train said, "make it clean." But Mason didn't shoot him. Not yet. Instead, he took a knife from his boot, the same kind used on Caleb. He tossed it to Train's feet. "Pick it up. Same weapon. Same odds." Train stared at it. Then, slowly, reached down. But Mason was faster. On shot. Straight to the thigh. Train collapsed with a grunt. You don't get the same ending. You don't get clean. You bleed. Mason left the gun on the table. Left the Jack of Hearts. Complicit. Train lived, but the leg would never work the same again. Mason wanted him to limp for the rest of his life. Now there were 2 names left, Ray Shore and Vincent Moretti, the man who gave the nod. The man who bled Caleb. Mason headed home. The storm was just beginning. Raymond Shore wasn't a man. He was a shadow that happened to wear skin. Mason spent weeks chasing scraps, prison records, dead aliases, bar tabs left unpaid. Every time he got close, the trail slipped sideways. Shore moved like fog, left nothing but blood and silence behind him. But eventually, all ghosts get tired. Mason found him in Chicago, living under the name Thomas Greer, a top-floor walk-up over a shuttered bookstore. Ray had shaved his head, lost weight, got clean, but Mason recognized the tattoo, the snake wrapped around the dagger, crawling up his wrist when he opened the door with a 6-pack of beer. Mason was waiting across the street, eyes behind a broken window in an abandoned laundromat. He didn't make his move that night, or the next. He watched. Ray worked at a recycling plant, ate dinner alone, no friends, no noise. His world was small, caged. He lived like a man waiting for a knock that never came. Mason made it come. Day 6. He waited outside Ray's apartment until the elevator rattled to life. Then he stepped in as the door opened. Gun low, face calm. Ray froze. He didn't scream, just exhaled. I knew you'd come. Mason pushed him back inside, sat him down. No yelling, no posturing, way beneath the thick layers of ice. He watched, waiting for another act. Ray looked tired, like the years since Caleb's death had rotted something inside him. Because Vincent told me to, Ray said. Because I was paid. Because I was stupid. He wasn't holding a weapon. He didn't need to. He knew what we were doing. He was going to expose it. You cut him and walked away? Ray nodded. I see him in my sleep. Every night. That look. Like I wasn't even human. Mason said nothing. Then he took out the knife. The original one. Blood cleaned, but the steel still remembered. He placed it on the table between them. Ray didn't touch it. Mason pulled out a single card. The 8 of spades. To Remedy, the executioner. I'm not going to kill you, Mason said. Ray looked up, startled. I should. You deserve it. Then why? Because I want you to feel what I feel. Every day. Every night. You're going to carry this until your bones crack under the weight. He leaned close. You're going to send me what I need. Vincent's safe house. The real one. You know it. Ray hesitated. Then nodded. He gave Mason the address, scribbled it with a shaking hand. Mason stood, tucked the card in Ray's shirt pocket. Live with it. He left without a shot fired, but Ray would never sleep soundly again. Now there was one left, Vincent Moretti, the center of the rot. The man who smiled when Caleb bled. He wasn't hiding in shadows. Vincent lived in a 3-story mansion in Hudson Valley, protected by private guards and a wall of silence. He was still running games, still pulling strings, still laughing in rooms filled with smoke and greed. Mason didn't sneak in. He walked through the front gate in broad daylight. Black coat, duffel bag slung over one shoulder, no mask. The guards moved fast. 2 came running. Mason dropped the first with a gut shot. The second lost his knee. By the time the front door burst open, Mason was already inside. The poker table was still there, velvet green, clean, just like the night Caleb died. Vincent sat at the head. No surprise on his face. He didn't flinch. He just stared at Mason, a slow grin spreading across his lips. I've been expecting you. Mason didn't speak. He placed the duffel bag on the table, opened it. 7 playing cards, each one blood-stained, each one with a name written across it. He laid them out, one by one. Jonas, Bert, Salvi, Train, Ray. Then he pulled out the last one, the King of Spades, blank. He slid it across to Vincent v. Vincent. His smile faded. You're not going to make it out of here. I know. Vincent's eyes narrowed. You think killing me fixes it? No. Mason reached into the bag, pulled out a small recorder, hit play. Vincent's voice spilled out. A conversation Ray had secretly recorded years ago. Caleb sees it, we bury him. Fast. Quiet. Don't make a show, just clean the table. Vincent's mouth opened. Mason raised the gun. You don't die for the lies, Mason said. You die for the truth. The shot tore through Vincent's chest. Then another and another. Mason emptied the clip. Vincent fell sideways, hands still on the card, blood pooling over the velvet. The guards came seconds later. Mason dropped the gun, raised his hands. He didn't fight. He was done running. They dragged him out in cuffs, eyes calm. The press swarmed it. A bloody vendetta, underground justice, a man who hunted the men who lied and left his brother to die. But Mason didn't care. He sat in his cell, alone, peaceful, a final card in his palm. The ace of hearts, red ink, a single word. They gave him 20 years. No trial, no appeal, no sob story. Mason pled guilty to all of it. The killings, the break-in, the vigilante trail soaked in blood and paper cards. The judge called it premeditated. The prosecutor said it was cold. Even the public defenders didn't bother to argue. But when the sentence was read, Mason didn't blink. Because it wasn't punishment. It was the price. And he'd already paid once. Now he paid again. They sent him upstate. Gray walls, gray skies. Maximum security, a concrete world of order and decay. Men around him carved from iron and failure. Killers, dealers, monsters. Mason walked among them quietly, made no alliances, needed no protection. He didn't talk about what he did. He didn't have to. They knew. Word spread through cell blocks and mess halls like blood in water. The man who hunted down 6 ghosts. The man who burned a made man in his own house. Some looked at him like a threat, others like a legend. But Mason didn't care what they saw. He wasn't there to be remembered. He was there to finish feeling every morning he sat alone at breakfast. Tray untouched, eyes straight ahead. Every night he wrote letters. He never mailed them. Just page after page, written in the same tight hand, addressed to a ghost. Caleb, I took the last name off the list today. He looked like he did that night. Calm. Like he thought nothing could touch him. He was wrong. I wish you were here to see it. The prison years moved slow, until one did it. It started with a cough, then the fatigue, then the tests. Tager 4, pancreatic, no treatment, no chance. The warden told him in his office, offered sympathy that sounded like protocol, said he could apply for compassionate release. Mason said no. He didn't need to die outside. He just needed to finish the book. He spent the last month of his life writing it. A manuscript. Short, brutal, unflinching. It wasn't a confession, it wasn't even an apology. It was truth, the story of Caleb, the game, the knife, the silence, the lies, the hunt. A card for every betrayal. He finished it with shaking hands, breath short, back hunched over the table in his cell. Then he handed it to the priest who visited once a week. Give it to the papers, Mason said. Tell them not to clean it up, not to spin it. Are you sure? The priest asked. Mason nodded. Let them choke on the truth. He died 3 days later. Alone, quiet, no last words, no candlelight, just a man, finally emptied of everything but the truth. The story hit the press a week later. Not just the murders, not just the confessions, but the rot underneath. The rigged games, the laundering, the blood money, Vincent's crimes, the trail of silence and bought cops and bodies that never made it to court, and Caleb's death. Not a bar fight, not a misunderstanding, but a silencing. The backlash was swift. 2 NYPD detectives were indicted for tampering with the original case file. A state senator who once received donations from Vincent Moretti's shell company resigned in disgrace. The Gaming Commission launched a full investigation into private underground poker circuits. The story became legend, not because it was violent, but because it was honest. And in the middle of it was a name carved in cold stone, Mason Dunn, who called him a killer. Others called him justice. But to those who really read the story, who understood the quiet grief of a man who buried his brother and took on the world with a steady hand and a deck of cards, they called him something else. A final player in a game no one else had the guts to win. Years later, in a downtown museum, there's a small glass case. No lights, no fanfare. Inside it is a deck of cards, faded and stained. 7 laid out in a fan, each with a name, each with a word, each a bullet wrapped in truth, and one last card beneath them, the Ace of Hearts. One word in blood red ink. Paid.